Have you ever wondered what would happen if an entire city called you a terrorist just because you dared to tell the truth? A 16-year-old girl is handcuffed in a courtroom while a police lieutenant laughs at her plea for justice. 3 days later, her mother is evicted, her younger brother nearly killed by a stray bullet, and the whole country labels her a threat to society. But what about you? If it were you, would you have the courage to stand up when every camera, every headline, and the entire justice system wants you silent? Don't look away, because the story you're about to hear will change the way you see justice forever. Comment if you still believe the truth deserves a voice, and make sure to subscribe, because the next episode will shock you even more. The screen snaps to black. Then, sound of handcuffs clashing. Dahlia Remington, just 16, is shoved to her knees inside the Orion Avenue courthouse, her voice trembling but defiant. "I didn't do it!" But her words drowned beneath Lieutenant Dorian Brooks' smirk, his voice sharp like a gavel. "Save it, sweetheart. You just made the news." Cut. A flicker of memory. Her mother, Celeste, thrown out of their apartment at dawn, clutching a photo frame to her chest as eviction officers laugh. Her little brother Nolan, screaming her name through the smoke, his foot grazed by a stray bullet fired accidentally near their building during her arrest. Cut again. A reporter's voice, cold and surgical. "Dahlia Remington, teen suspect or domestic threat?" The world didn't ask questions. It passed judgment. And as she sits alone in that holding cell, the fluorescent lights humming above her like a lie too loud to silence, Dahlia looks up, not with fear, but with a calm that unsettles. "If I fall, I'll fall knowing I told the truth." You feel it, don't you? That gut punch? Now ask yourself, if a 16-year-old girl can stand up to a machine built to crush her, what would you do? Inside Crescent Heights Juvenile Center, the silence was never quiet. The walls whispered rumors. The guards smirked like they knew how it would end. And then it came, slipped under Dahlia's metal cell door. A folded paper, no signature, just a sentence. "Stop digging, or your brother dies." She froze, not because of fear, but because Nolan was all she had left. And now, he was bait. Dahlia tried to alert the warden. They misplaced the note. She demanded a lawyer. They cut off her phone time. She screamed at the cameras. No one was watching, or worse, they were. But she didn't stop. From a shared library book, she pulled out a torn photo, an old mugshot of Lieutenant Brooks, and behind it, scribbled names. Boys like her, all black, all locked away, all erased. That night, someone slipped a small Bible into her cell. Inside it, a USB drive. And on that drive, court files, sealed police records, and surveillance logs. All pointing to one truth. Brooks had planted evidence before, dozens of times, and she was just the latest. The next day, her hope cracked. A guard found a packet of drugs in her backpack during a transfer hearing. It made headlines. "Teen terror suspect found with narcotics in court." The media feasted. They cut her scholarship. They suspended her trial's review. And the last blow? The community protest held in front of the courthouse in her defense, peaceful, candlelit, led by clergy, was broadcasted live. But the broadcast was doctored. Crowd noise added, Molotov cocktails spliced in. Suddenly, the nation saw it not as a vigil, but a riot. Lieutenant Brooks appeared on television that night, polished, heroic, smiling as he warned of a domestic radicalization threat from within. Dahlia watched it from behind the plexiglass of a detention interview room, and for the first time she cried, not for herself, but because the truth wasn't loud enough. It started with a whisper. A night shift janitor, eyes kind, slid a sealed envelope beneath Dahlia's tray at breakfast. Inside, an unsigned note and photocopies of the police report. One detail hit like a punch. The courtroom camera malfunctioned for exactly 14 minutes, just long enough for someone to plant the drugs, just long enough to erase what really happened. But what caught Dahlia off guard was a name at the bottom of the tampered chain of custody log. Brooks. Her hands trembled, not from fear, from fury. She memorized every line, then flushed the papers. It was too risky to keep. But something had changed. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was planning. That night, from the hallway beyond the steel bars came a knock. Not a guard, not an inmate, just a stranger in a gray hoodie. He mouthed one word, "Shadowette." The next morning, the world shifted. A live stream appeared, untraceable, raw, unedited. Footage of Brooks receiving offshore payments, emails, wire logs. The voice of Shadowette narrating, "Justice isn't broken. It's been sold." But the kill shot came not from the hacker, but from someone no one expected. Marigold Price, a local reporter known for wedding columns, released the original courthouse footage. Clear, undeniable. It showed Brooks dropping a small packet into Dahlia's bag, frame by frame, in slow motion. The nation erupted, but the rot went deeper. Marigold revealed more, files connecting Mayor Caldwell and Senator Hawthorne to a massive voter suppression program. Dahlia's case was a decoy, meant to distract from illegal purges of black voters across the state. Then came the final blow. Aurora Blake, Dahlia's only legal ally, was found dead, alleged car crash. But Dahlia knew, so did Nolan, because hours before she died, Aurora had smuggled one last package into the detention center, a flash drive marked, "In case I don't make it." And as Dahlia held that small plastic case, fingers trembling, tears silent, she whispered, "Then I'll make sure you do." In the flickering light of the detention center's common room, Dahlia tapped on an old keyboard with blistered fingers. Every keystroke was encrypted. Every second was borrowed time. The flash drive Aurora left behind, marked "In case I don't make it," contained sealed court records, hacked emails, and one unfinished message. "They're watching Harvard too. Trust only Isla." Her breath hitched. She hadn't spoken to Professor Isla Penrose in months, not since being arrested. But that night, Dahlia composed a single email. No names, no attachments, just one sentence, buried in legal code and citations. Check Brooks. Arrest history. Sealed files. 1997. Black youth. Lost evidence. 3 days passed. Then came the flood. Isla didn't reply with words. She uploaded a 23-minute expose onto a private law journal channel, breaking attorney-client privilege, risking her career. Inside it, Brooks's hidden past. 6 sealed arrests. All teens. All black. All cases dropped. No accountability. Dahlia took a breath and hit upload. Her own video followed. No edits, no tears, just truth. She laid it all bare. The lies, the corruption, the dead, the forgotten, and the fight that had just begun. It went viral in under 6 hours. By morning, the world had a new name on its lips: Justice for Dahlia. Protests erupted across all 50 states. Students walked out. Churches rang bells. Even soldiers recorded messages of support. By week's end, Dorian Brooks was stripped of his badge. Mayor Caldwell resigned. Senator Hawthorne vanished from public view. But the real moment, the one no camera could capture, was when Dahlia stood on the steps of Evermore Community Center, the same place where she'd once won her first debate trophy at age 12. Now she wore no medals, only resolve. "They tried to break me," she said, voice steady, "but I'm still here, and I won't be the last." They thought it was over. They thought silencing one girl would bury the truth. But when 2 guards cornered Dahlia in the back hallway of Crescent Heights Juvenile Center, no cameras, no questions, something snapped. The first blow came without a word. The second was followed by a whisper: "Stay quiet, and your brother lives." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She looked up, blood trailing from her temple, and whispered back, "You just proved I was right." That night, her bruises told a louder truth than any courtroom ever had. Isla Penrose returned with federal lawyers. The juvenile center was stormed by civil rights investigators. The guards vanished, and an unmarked envelope appeared in Dahlia's cell. No return address, just a phrase: "You were never their first target." Inside, a flash drive, encrypted, untouched, labeled Project Silencer, Tier 1, Gifted Black Youth Surveillance. Dozens of names, hundreds of case files, cities, schools, dates, and at the very top, circled in red, Remington, Dahlia, file activated, 18 months before arrest. She stood in the gray morning light, files in hand. At the gates of the facility, press flashing, sirens echoing, Nolan rushing into her arms. Dahlia didn't celebrate. She walked to the nearest camera, held up the list and said, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning. This time we fight together." Fade out. One final heartbeat. Then the screen goes black, except for the glow of one phrase. Part 2, already in motion. Inside her dim cell, Dahlia unfolded the envelope Isla Penrose had smuggled past the guards, marked only with a red stamp that read, "For your eyes only." Inside, a classified dossier, dozens of arrest reports, photos, false charges, same patterns, same signature, same cop, Lieutenant Dorian Brooks. Every case involved a gifted black student. Every case ended in silence, but this time they picked the wrong girl. Knowing the file would be confiscated by morning, Dahlia didn't sleep. She memorized everything. Dates, names, phrases, badge numbers, engraving them into her mind like scripture. At 3:11 a.m., the door slammed open. "Contraband inspection," the warden said. They tore through her mattress, her shoes, even the pages of her Bible. She said nothing, not a flicker of fear, not a plea, just steady eyes, and a voice inside her that whispered, "Let them take the paper. They'll never take what's in your head." When the guards left, the cell was cold. Her fingers were bleeding. She tucked pieces of paper beneath the floor tile to protect others' names. Some were gone. Most were safe. She exhaled. This wasn't just survival. This was preparation. She was smiling. For the first time in weeks, Dahlia felt hope flicker. The judge had agreed to reopen the hearing. Isla's documents had made an impact. Reporters were outside. Eyes were watching. And then, as she stood to leave the courtroom, "Wait!" Officer Wesley Hart barked. A sudden search. No warrant. No explanation. They dragged her backpack into view, ripped it open, gasps. Inside, 2 tightly wrapped bricks of narcotics. The room spun. No, that's not mine." Dahlia's voice cracked as Brooks stood in the corner, arms folded, eyes gleaming. She turned to the bailiff, to the judge, to the cameras. "Please, they planted that. Someone check the footage." But the footage never aired. The camera, again, malfunctioned. Same as last time. And the worst part? Officer Hart had once tutored her in middle school. He used to call her the girl with the spark. Now he wouldn't even meet her eyes. They cuffed her again, this time rougher, bruising her wrists. Her mother screamed from the hallway, but was held back. Back in her cell, Dahlia didn't cry. She carved one word into the wall with her nail. "Remember?" Because the system wanted her broken. But she was busy remembering everything. The news spread like fire. Teen terrorist family evicted in wake of court chaos. No one mentioned that Harper Langston, Dahlia's mother, had paid rent on time for 15 years. No one cared that her brother Nolan had been an honor student with no record. At dawn, they were forced out of their apartment at Brentwood Walk. No court order, just 2 officers, 3 threats, and a building manager too scared to intervene. Nolan begged them to stop until one officer slammed him against the wall. The cuffs snapped shut. "Interfering with an investigation," they said. Dahlia watched the footage hours later, smuggled in on a contraband flash drive. No sound. Just Nolan's face contorted in pain. Her mother collapsed on the sidewalk. The family's few belongings tossed like garbage. Blankets, old trophies, a photo of the 3 of them in happier times. It wasn't just punishment. It was a message. If you speak, we erase you. That night, Dahlia sat alone in her cell at Crescent Heights Juvenile Center, clutching a torn piece of that same photo. She whispered to herself, "They can take everything, but not the truth." Her voice didn't shake, and in that silence, where most would break, Dahlia began to plot the most dangerous move of all, letting the world see exactly what they'd done. He was the only one who saw everything. Levy Ashford had been outside the shop the night Dahlia was framed, a quiet bystander who saw no robbery, no struggle, just Dahlia standing still, stunned as officers swarmed her like she was armed. From her cold cell, Dahlia managed to get word to him. A torn envelope, a coded message. He replied with just one sentence. They told me to disappear. 3 days later, Levi's apartment in Monroe Towers was raided under a noise complaint. His phone seized, his laptop missing. No official record filed. But one thing survived, an old voicemail. In it, Levi whispered, I know the truth, but if I say anything, they'll come for my brother next. Dahlia played that recording over and over, alone under the flickering light of the juvenile rec room. She didn't cry, she didn't rage, she just sat there and memorized every second. Because if the courts wouldn't hear him, she would. Because every silence around her was another life crushed. And because she knew the only way to save the next Levi was to burn the whole lie down. The next morning, she stole a guard's tablet, not to escape, to start broadcasting. She had no studio, no microphone, no makeup team. Just a cracked guard's tablet and the truth. At exactly 3:27 a.m., with the hallway cameras glitching, thanks to a loop planted by Shadowette, Dahlia went live. Her face lit by the blue glow of the screen, she spoke with no script, no edits, no filters. My name is Dahlia Remington. I'm 16. I've been framed. And the man who did it has offshore accounts stuffed with silence money. She tapped the screen. A spreadsheet appeared. Names, transfers, dates, all linked to Dorian Brooks, all time-stamped after every wrongful arrest. Then came the audio clip, his voice distorted but undeniable. If she talks, bury her case in evidence. Or bury her. The live chat exploded. Justice for Dahlia trended globally in under 4 minutes. By the 10th minute, moderators from the Civic Freedom Board tried to take the stream down. But Shadowette had mirrored it across 217 servers. It couldn't be stopped. Somewhere in the stream, Dahlia's voice cracked. Not with fear, but with resolve. They thought locking me up would silence me. They forgot. You don't need a stage to start a revolution. Outside the juvenile center, crowds began gathering, holding candles, signs, and phones. The night lit up, and in the shadows, someone quietly whispered, "She just became the voice they can't erase." It started with candles, a few students, 2 pastors, one grieving mother holding a photo of Dahlia. By nightfall, Northbridge City Hall was surrounded. Thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, chanting her name. Justice for Dahlia! Their voices trembled the glass of the courthouse that once shackled her. And then, chaos, flash grenades, smoke, screams, but not from the protesters, from police in riot gear, unmarked, unprovoked, moving like a wave through the crowd. Phones caught it all. An elderly woman pushed to the ground, a teen dragged by his braids. Within minutes, headlines screamed, "Violent mob storms, City Hall." But what they didn't know was that Dahlia had planned for this. From inside her cell, she watched the live stream with tears streaking her face. Not from fear, but fury. Because the man orchestrating it all, standing safely behind the tinted windows of a government van, was Dorian Brooks. She turned to the small recorder hidden in her legal notes, her voice steady. If you see this, know that they turned peace into panic, truth into threat. But I won't let them rewrite the story again. And far across the city, on an anonymous server blinking green, Shadowette began uploading the raw footage that would destroy the official version, frame by frame. The fire outside the fence. It happened just before dawn. A low rumble, then a flash of fire streaking through the dark. Boom! A Molotov cocktail exploded against the outer wall of Crescent Heights Juvenile Center, sending flames crawling up the concrete like a warning written in smoke. Guards rushed. Sirens echoed. But it wasn't the fire that rattled Dahlia. It was the message, sprayed in dripping red letters across her cell window. "You're next." She stood frozen, bare feet on cold tile, staring at those 3 words as ashes floated past the reinforced glass. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. And she knew, whoever lit that bottle had access, timing, intent, and backing. This wasn't just hate. This was strategy, fear, weaponized. But while the others in her block cried, huddled, begged for transfer, Dahlia turned to the corner of her bunk where she kept her handwritten timeline hidden behind a loose screw. With trembling fingers, she added a line. Threat escalates. They want chaos. They want silence. She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she whispered, just loud enough for the red paint to hear her. If I burn, the truth burns with me. Your move. In the surveillance booth, a guard watching the feed blinked, then quietly reached for a burner phone. The chain reaction had just begun, silencing the defender. When Dahlia finally met Roman Whitaker, she didn't expect a suit. She expected a fighter, and she got one. Roman was a civil rights attorney with a reputation for dismantling crooked cases brick by brick. He stood beside Dahlia not as a savior, but as someone who believed her truth mattered, even if no one else did. But justice has a price in this system. 3 days after Roman submitted a motion to subpoena Brooks' private security firm, a wave of whispers hit the media. An ethics violation, an undisclosed conflict, a suspension pending review. By sundown, his license to practice had been suspended. No hearing, no trial, just silence. Dahlia watched it unfold from her cell, a flickering TV in the common room playing talking heads twisting the story. Is this the man behind a dangerous teen agitator? And as Roman was escorted out of Evermore Courthouse, his files seized, his name dragged through every outlet, Dahlia felt something rupture deep inside her. Not fear, not defeat. A vow. In that moment, she knew. The system wasn't just afraid of her, it was terrified of anyone who dared stand next to her. Later that night, she scrawled a message behind a loose brick in her bunk. If they can take him down, imagine what they'll do to the next one, or the next. So we don't stop. Not now. And from that darkness, a plan began to form. Sanctuary at the Paragon. Aurora Blake hadn't seen Harper Langston, Dahlia's mother, since college. But when Dahlia appeared on the doorstep of the Paragon Chapel, bruised, hunted, and barely holding it together, Aurora didn't hesitate. She opened the gate. She locked the doors. She gave her sanctuary. The Paragon wasn't just a chapel. It was a forgotten corner of the city where mothers buried sons, and truth was whispered like prayer. Aurora, once a frontline activist turned quiet guardian, now risked everything by hiding the most wanted girl in Northbridge. That night, as Dahlia lay on a cot beneath stained glass windows, lit by streetlight flicker, Aurora stood over her and whispered, "Your mother believed in storms. You are one." But outside, that storm was gathering. Brooks's men weren't far. Anonymous tips had been flooding in. Surveillance vans crept within blocks. Every hour she stayed, Aurora was gambling her life, and she knew it. And then came the moment. A brick shattered the back window of the chapel. A flare hissed. On the broken wall smeared in red spray, "We see you." Aurora didn't flinch. She turned to Dahlia, pressed a cold cloth into her hand, and said, "They can't burn down what we've already built in fire." That's when Dahlia realized this wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about preparing for war. The file that could burn it all down. Tucked in the lining of Aurora's coat, hidden like a final act of faith, was the flash drive. Dahlia didn't ask how she got it. She just knew it cost Aurora everything. Inside the encrypted folder was a dossier labeled Fiona Caldwell, Internal Ops, the mayor, the woman whose face still appeared on morning news, urging peace and patience. But now Dahlia saw the truth. Caldwell wasn't just protecting Brooks. She built the system he thrived in. She greenlit arrests that never made it to court. She authorized surveillance lists targeting Black youth labeled as intellectual threats. One file stopped Dahlia cold. A time-stamped document, signed by Caldwell, marked her name. Remington, Dahlia. Threat Index 9.7, Contain and Control. She wasn't just a scapegoat. She was a target by design. Dahlia sat there, hands trembling, as rain hit the stained glass window of the Paragon Chapel. In that moment, silence wasn't grief. It was calculation. "They saw me coming," she whispered. "They always did." She had two choices: hide or go public. She chose both. That night, with Shadowit's help, she scheduled a nationwide stream. Title: This is How They Build a Lie. But before the video could air, the chapel lights flickered. Power grids spike. An anonymous ping. They're watching now. She didn't flinch. The fall of a false ally. The moment Dahlia's expose went live, it swept through the country like wildfire. The numbers climbed by the second. 5 million views, 10 million, trending on every platform. Faces once silent began to speak. Among them was Senator Celeste Hawthorne, standing solemn at the Capitol steps, promising an independent investigation into systemic misconduct. Her words were measured, her gaze rehearsed. For a brief moment, Dahlia allowed herself to believe. Maybe someone in power finally cared. But truth doesn't stay buried for long. Just 48 hours later, leaked financial records surfaced. An anonymous whistleblower inside the Treasury. The files revealed direct deposits, offshore transfers from accounts tied to Malachi Freeman, a longtime political consultant and fixer with ties to Brooks and Caldwell alike. Celeste hadn't been investigating. She had been managing the damage. The betrayal stung deeper than any headline. Dahlia's face flickered in a corner live stream window as the truth broke. Her expression wasn't shock. It was confirmation. "They don't fear justice," she said into the camera. "They just fear losing control." In the background, protesters filled the streets of Rainford, holding up digital screens playing her video on loop. One child stood on their father's shoulders, clutching a sign. "I believe her." It wasn't just a broadcast anymore. It was a reckoning. The fire, the blame, and the list. Just when the tide seemed to turn in her favor, a blast shattered the night. 30 lives gone in an explosion that ripped through Dahlia's old neighborhood, leveling the block where she once handed out food with her mother. Blood on the pavement, smoke over Rainford, grief broadcast live. Within minutes, headlines spread like poison. Teen suspect linked to domestic terror. From Prodigy to Pariah, Dahlia Remington on the run. They didn't care that she had been locked inside a safe house. They didn't need truth, just a target. And Dahlia, barely 17, became public enemy number one. But what they didn't see was what she held in her hand as the sirens blared. A worn folder marked for the next one. Inside was the list: names, faces, stories. Other gifted black teens labeled a threat. A pattern stretching across the nation, masked as isolated arrests. She walked into the storm, not away from it. As the camera fades, we see her silhouette under the flicker of a broken streetlight. Behind her, a wall tagged in red. "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds." Her voice, calm but unshaken, closes the story. "You can destroy my name, but you won't erase the truth. This time, we fight together." The city was still reeling from the explosion. Dahlia was still branded a fugitive. But in a dimly lit apartment above a shuttered bookstore in Glenridge Corner, a woman held the truth, on a hard drive barely the size of a credit card. Marigold Price, an investigative journalist once silenced for asking the wrong questions, watched the clip again. Frame by frame, she saw it. The muzzle flash came not from Dahlia, but from a plainclothes officer under Brooks' command. The courthouse shooting had been orchestrated, fabricated, weaponized. It was the kind of footage that could topple men like Brooks. But there was a cost. Releasing it meant signing her own death warrant. She'd already been followed twice that week. Her apartment door had been tampered with. And yet, as she looked at the grainy footage and the trembling hand of the officer planting the gun, Marigold knew silence would make her complicit. She whispered into her recorder, "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it." But Dahlia was never the one holding the weapon. She uploaded the file to the secure drive titled Operation Iron Veil, full clip, then hit send. Moments later, her screen went dark. But somewhere, on 1,000 phones across the country, the truth had already begun to load. The clip dropped at 7:43 p.m. No warning, no press release, just a silent upload from an anonymous channel named Iron Truth. Dahlia's face was the first thing viewers saw, eyes burning, voice steady. This is the truth they tried to bury with bullets and headlines. Behind her, in a shadowed corner of a basement lined with servers, sat Silas Bennett, former cybersecurity contractor turned whistleblower. With every keystroke, he rerouted IP addresses, masked their trail, and launched the footage into the bloodstream of the internet. The clip didn't just go viral, it detonated. It showed raw, uncut footage of Brooks's officers firing first, planting evidence, laughing as they shut off their body cams. The nation watched in horror as the timeline unraveled. Dahlia wasn't a threat, she was a target. Within hours, hashtag Justice for Dahlia exploded across platforms. Crowds surged in every major city. What began as scattered vigils turned into a sea of fists and candlelight outside city halls from Chicago to New Orleans. At the center of it all, Dahlia stood in silence, watching through a cracked phone screen as the world finally turned its eyes toward her, not as a criminal, but as a warning. And maybe, just maybe, a leader. She looked at Silas. "We don't run anymore," she said. And as the noise outside swelled to chants, she whispered to herself, "They gave me a voice by trying to silence it. Now they'll hear every word." They stripped Brooks of his badge. Caldwell resigned under pressure as documents poured into public view. Proof of wire transfers, coded memos, election suppression tactics. But it wasn't over. Aurora Blake, the woman who had once rocked Dahlia to sleep in church pews, was found dead just hours after delivering a final manila envelope. Inside were names, dates, locations, evidence of a national network targeting gifted black youth under the guise of prevention. Dahlia wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last. At Evermore Community Center, hundreds stood in silence as Dahlia approached the podium. The lights flickered slightly. Her voice didn't. "They thought killing her would stop this," she began, eyes scanning the crowd. "But Aurora's death didn't silence us. It gave us our reason." She held up the envelope. "We now know this isn't just one crooked cop. It's not just one courtroom. It's a machine. And machines don't feel shame unless we make them." Behind her, on the projector screen, a list of names faded in. Teenagers, children, forgotten prodigies labeled as threats. Dahlia placed her hand over her heart, then raised it. "I survived not to hide. I survived to fight. For them." The crowd rose, not in applause, in solemn commitment. A new chapter had begun, and this time, she wasn't fighting alone. There are moments in life when the world demands your silence, but your soul won't let you. Dahlia Remington was only 16 when the system tried to erase her, when powerful hands twisted the truth until her name became a warning, not a child. But in the face of betrayal, brutality, and loss, she didn't fold. She studied every threat. She memorized every lie. And when no one would stand for her, she stood alone, until the truth began to echo. She didn't seek vengeance. She sought clarity. And when her words finally cut through the noise, when millions watched her speak not with rage but with unshaken truth, something shifted. People began to see not a suspect but a survivor, not a headline but a human. And yet the cost was heavy. She lost her childhood. She lost protectors like Aurora Blake. But what she never lost was the belief that truth, even in darkness, has a pulse. And when spoken, it spreads. Dahlia's story is not just about a courtroom or corruption. It's about the courage to resist when the world writes your ending for you. Because sometimes the greatest act of defiance is to keep telling your story. And the lesson? Even when the system is designed to break you, your voice, steady, brave, relentless, can build a future louder than fear. And that future might just save someone else.